Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into something even darker than usual. Your dreams might be soft, but your destination is far from it. Let's ease in gently, fan on, room dimmed, and thoughts quieted because you're about to wake up not as a peasant, not as a noble, but as the executioner. Yes, congratulations. You've just opened your eyes in the year 1380, and apparently it's your first official day on the job. What's that smell? Oh, it's your new leather hood soaked with sweat and a faint memory of blood. You blink a few times hoping this is a nightmare, but nope, that's your axe in the corner, freshly sharpened, still with wood chips on the handle. The floor beneath you is uneven stone, damp from the previous night's rain. Or was it something else? You're not sure anymore. Your room? A single torch barely flickers against the mossy wall. You don't get a lavish chamber. You live behind the gallows, literally. Your bed is straw-walled straw, reused more times than you want to imagine. It scratches your back with every shift. A rat stares at you from the corner, unimpressed. It doesn't even bother running anymore. You're both residents now. You rise, creaking like an old drawbridge. Your back hurts, your joints ache, and your fingers tingle from last night's practice swing. You still remember the sound the dummy made when your axe hit it wrong. It wasn't satisfying. It was messy. Too messy. Breakfast? That's cute. No one brings porridge to the executioner. You chew a crust of blackened bread so hard it might qualify as medieval dental training. You sip thin ale, not for pleasure, but because the water might kill you faster than the crowd ever could. You pull on your worn boots, cracked at the toes. You lace them slowly, deliberately. Today, you are expected. And not just by the authorities. The whole town knows. Today is your first public execution. The walk from your hovel to the square is silent except for your own breathing and the wind whispering through the alleyways like gossip. The locals don't speak to you. They look away. Children stop playing. Mothers pull them inside. You're a ghost with flesh, alive but not welcome. As you pass the baker, he pretends not to see you, which is strange because you caught him watching you sharpen your axe yesterday with a kind of nervous reverence. You wonder if he's next, or maybe he's just scared of being seen with you. The executioner's shadow is contagious. Your job is essential. The village needs someone to do the dirty work. But you are a reminder of mortality, of crime, of consequence, and worst of all, of what they might become. You reach the gallows platform. It creaks under your boots. It's been used before. Not by you, but you've seen it. Sometimes in your dreams. They hand you a parchment. The sentence: a thief. Third time offense. Some onions, a pair of boots, and a single wooden spoon. You squint. It feels absurd. You imagine explaining this to someone in 2025. He was executed for stealing a spoon. Historians still argue whether executioners took pride in their work or simply did what they had to in silence. You feel like both. A part of you wants to do it cleanly, honorably. The other part just wants to survive this day without vomiting. You run your thumb along the axe's blade. The metal is cool, heavy, final. The handle is wrapped in cloth, more for grip than ceremony. It still smells like sap and something metallic underneath. You steady your breath. Then you hear them. Footsteps. Dozens. No hundreds. The square fills quickly. Faces blur together as wide. Mouths already forming opinions. It's not just justice they're here for. It's the drama. Some cheer, some boo. One drunk man shouts, "Make it quick, but messy." You don't respond. That's part of the role. You are mute, mysterious, a moving shadow in daylight. The condemned is brought forth, thin, mid-30s. Looks more tired than scared. He doesn't fight, doesn't beg, just stands, resigned. His ankles wobble slightly, but his back stays straight. He makes eye contact with you. You freeze. For a second, you see yourself. And then you remember. This is your job. The priest says something about repentance. The crowd pretends to care. The man breathes deeply. So do you. You raise the axe slowly, letting it catch the light. There's a hush, Even the wind seems to stop. You bring it down. The sound it makes isn't dramatic. It's not thunder. It's not music. It's wood meeting meat and bone. And then silence again. Then cheers. Coins hit the stage near your boots. A child cries. A woman laughs. Someone throws a piece of bread. You wipe the blade clean mechanically. You've entered a rhythm now. Action, reaction. Guilt, numbness. Thought, silence. Your job is done. But your day is not. You return to your quarters. Sit down. Stare at the same rat. He still doesn't blink. You think of the man's eyes again. Were they angry? Grateful? Empty? You're not sure. But they'll be with you tonight, in your dreams, alongside the hundreds you haven't even met yet. Welcome to the first day of the rest of your career, and possibly the last of your peace. You wake up the morning after your first execution with a strange feeling in your chest. It's not pride, not regret either. It's weight. Not the weight of the axe that's still leaning against the wall, its blade wiped clean, though a faint rust-colored hue remains at the edge of the iron. No, this weight is deeper. Inside you, like something has shifted and won't shift back. And even worse, the town knows. You step out of your quarters, the small, damp chamber behind the gallows, and the world is quiet. Not peaceful quiet, not morning birds and mist quiet. This is calculated silence. Eyes peer out from shutters. Footsteps halt when they see you. Conversations die the moment your boots hit stone. You're no longer just a man. You're the man who swung the axe. At the market, things get stranger. The merchant who once called you friend now drops his gaze. He arranges cabbages that don't need arranging. His hands shake slightly. You ask for a loaf of bread. He nods too fast, wraps it up too tight, and gives it to you with a trembling smile. On the house, he whispers. You try to protest, but he insists. Loudly, too loudly. Others hear. And now everyone sees it. The man who kills for the crown gets his bread for free. Next stall, the butcher. He doesn't meet your eyes either. Just drops a pouch of dried meat on the counter and takes 2 steps back like you might lunge. You want to explain that you only lunge at condemned criminals, not sausage makers, but you don't. What would be the point? You've stopped being a person. You're now a symbol. A walking warning. Children don't play when you pass by anymore. One little boy who used to wave at you with muddy hands now clutches his mother's skirts and stares at the ground. You want to wave back, smile, but you don't. Because you remember what happened yesterday. And he probably does too. You overhear a woman whispering as you pass a fountain. He looked the man in the eyes before swinging, just stared right through him. You didn't mend tall, but she's not wrong. Historians still argue whether medieval executioners were shunned out of fear or out of guilt. You don't need historians. You know the answer. It's both. The people need you, but they can't afford to like you. So they build walls, invisible ones, between your body and their bakery, your boots and their prayers. You're not barred from the tavern, but you're certainly not welcome in it. You try anyway. That night, you push open the tavern door. The music stutters. Dice stop clattering. A woman lowers her drink without taking the sip she had just raised. All eyes flick to you, then quickly away, as if staring too long might summon bad luck. You sit in the far corner. The barmaid approaches like a leaf blown by fear. She sets down a tankard of bitter ale. You didn't order it. She doesn't charge you. It's from the house, she says softly, barely audible. She sets down a bowl of stew, eyes lowered. Her hands tremble. You nod your thanks. She nods in return, but she's already gone before your spoon hits broth. You take a sip. It tastes like salt and sorrow. Across the room, 3 men play cards, trying to pretend you aren't there. One folds his hand too early. Another forgets to collect his winnings. You're not just disrupting the atmosphere. You are the atmosphere now. The tavern has become your echo chamber. Every breath you take stretches the silence. Every bite of stew swallows whatever small joy was left in the room. You finish eating. The room collectively exhales as you leave. On your way home, A man bumps into you by accident. His elbow brushes your cloak. He freezes, apologizes immediately 3 times. You assure him it's fine, but he's already half running away, muttering a prayer under his breath. A child watches from a window. You glance up. He ducks. You're a ghost now. Not dead, just untouchable. Back in your quarters, you light the single candle on your table. The flame flickers, then settles. The rat that lives in the far corner emerges. Your only companion who doesn't judge you, doesn't fear you. He knows what you are and stays anyway. He nibbles on a crumb you dropped earlier and glances at you. You glance back. You raise your tankard slightly a toast. He doesn't return it, but he doesn't run either. That's more than you can say for most people today. You stare at your axe, leaning against the far wall. It doesn't gleam anymore. You cleaned it, but there's a dullness now, like it remembers what it did, like it regrets it. Or maybe that's just you. Your hand twitches. The same hand that held it yesterday, the same hand that took a life. You flex your fingers as if trying to squeeze out the memory, but the blood is already gone. Only the feeling remains. And it's heavier than the axe ever was. You weren't always this quiet. There was a time when you laughed too loud at jokes that weren't funny, when your hands were soft and your boots didn't leave bloody prints behind them. You were just another hungry soul in a town full of silence and secrets. Then one day, the old executioner disappeared. Some say he got sick. Others whisper that he was poisoned, a vial slipped into his evening stew, or perhaps something a little more creative. One theory insists he simply walked into the forest and kept walking. You never found out. You never asked. Because shortly after that, they came for you. Not with chains. Not with shouts. With an offer. It pays, and you eat. Every day. That was enough. You were never brave, just desperate. And desperation, as you've learned, is the perfect trait for a man who needs to hold a blade steady while the condemned begs for his life. Your apprenticeship didn't begin with a ceremony. There was no scroll, no holy oil, no robe passed down with reverence. Just an old man with clouded eyes and a voice like dried leather saying, "Pick up the axe. It's heavier than it looks." He was right. It wasn't just the iron. It was the weight of consequences. Your first task, cleaning the block, you thought you were prepared. But no one is ready for the stink of dried blood in wood grain. It doesn't wash out. It seeps. It stays. It clings to your fingers even after 5 scrubbings and half a bar of stolen soap. You vomited behind the shed. He didn't say a word, just handed you a second rag. Then came the next task, watching. You stood in the crowd as your mentor performed his work. Smooth, efficient, a craftsman. He didn't wear the hood that day. He looked his victim in the eyes. They respect you more when they can see who's ending them. You weren't sure if that was true. You're still not, because when the blade landed one clean cut, the crowd cheered. They cheered. You flinched. Your mentor didn't. He just cleaned the blade, turned, and walked away as if he'd just repaired a door hinge. That night, he told you this. The axe doesn't get lighter. You just stop noticing how heavy it is. You thought that was dramatic. Now you know it's not. Your first real test wasn't a person. It was a pig. No one ever tells you this part. Before you're allowed to execute a human, they make you practice on animals. A pig is close to human in shape, in mass, in noise. You were told to swing once, clean. You missed the neck, caught the jaw instead. It squealed, screamed, tried to run with half its face hanging loose. You dropped the axe. You cried. Your mentor didn't comfort you. He just said, if you can't finish what you start, don't ever start. So you picked up the axe again, hands shaking. You swung again. This time, the pig didn't move. The first man you executed wasn't a monster. He was a thief. Stole a loaf of bread during famine. Urfamine. You read the charges aloud. His legs gave out. He didn't resist, didn't scream, but his eyes, they stayed open until the very last moment. They met yours. He wasn't angry. He wasn't afraid. He was disappointed, as if to say, You too? And then you'll swing. It wasn't perfect. You felt the blade hit bone. You heard the sickening crunch that tells you it didn't go all the way through. You swung again. This time, it worked. The crowd was quiet. No cheers this time, just the sound of flies, already gathering. That night, you didn't sleep. You just sat in the corner, staring at your blood-splattered boots. You told yourself it was duty, justice, law, but deep down, you knew it was hunger. You had taken a life to buy another week of porridge. You were becoming exactly the kind of man you once prayed to avoid becoming. And yet, you return the next morning, and the next, and the next. Over time, you stopped looking at their faces. You stopped reading the names, just the crime, the method, the date. Hanged, beheaded, quartered. Some were guilty, some were not. It didn't matter anymore. You weren't the judge, just the blade. Your mentor left you a year later. One morning, he was gone, left a note and a coin. The hood is yours now, and just like that, you were no longer the apprentice. You were the executioner. You didn't feel ready, but you wore the hood anyway because someone had to. Because there was a list on the table and a man already tied to the post. You picked up the axe and walked out. Since then, you've stopped shaking. Not because you're stronger, because you're numb. Your hands know the motion. Your back knows the posture. Your mind floats elsewhere now. Sometimes during the act, you think about stew, about shoes, about the smell of apples. That's what keeps you sane. Maybe, or maybe that's the first sign you've lost your soul. Historians still debate whether medieval executioners were respected or reviled. You no longer care. You used to wonder if the townspeople saw a monster when they looked at you. Now you know the truth. They see a mirror of what they'd become if they were just a little more desperate. They say a craftsman is only as good as his tools, which is either comforting or horrifying, depending on your profession. For you, it's horrifying because your tools aren't brushes or chisels. They don't paint. They don't build. They end. And yet, in your world, each one is a masterpiece. Let's start with your axe. Not just any axe, it's yours, weighted, balanced, tempered in a way that makes it hum when it cuts clean. It has a name not officially, but you whisper it when no one is around. Old Mercy, because when it lands right, that's what it gives. Sort of. The blade is crescent-shaped, curved just enough to follow the arc of your swing, sharp enough to slice through meat, thick enough to split bone. You spend hours honing it, oiling it, running your thumb along the edge, not to feel proud, but to make sure it won't betray you mid-swing. Because if it fails, you don't just get embarrassment. You get screaming. You get guilt. You get a crowd that doesn't come back next time. Because here's the secret. Execution is theater. Your tools are props. Your movements are choreographed. The audience didn't come to see a man struggle. They came to see a man disappear. Clean, fast, professional. Of course, the axe isn't for every job. Some punishments require creativity. The rope, for example. A simple tool, yet brutal in its own quiet way. Hanging seems gentle on paper, no blood, no mess, but you know better. If the knot is wrong, if the drop is miscalculated, the neck doesn't break. The condemned chokes. Their feet kick. Their eyes bulge. You've seen it. And once, you were the reason it happened. You still hear the gurgling sometimes. Not in dreams. In silence, when everything else goes still. So now, you measure the drop to the inch. You test the knot 3 times. You even mutter a small prayer, not for them, but for yourself. Because a botched hanging is not just a tragedy. It's a black mark on your name. And in this line of work, reputation is everything. Then there's the sword. Yes, you sometimes use a sword, usually for nobles. Executions where dignity is involved, where the condemned wears velvet and the audience includes bishops and barons. You must wear your cleanest tunic, your straightest face. The sword doesn't swing like an axe. It slides, a quick thrust to the neck, or a diagonal slash. One moment they're kneeling, muttering final prayers the next. Their head is rolling toward the bishop's feet. Dignified, elegant, terrifying. You keep the sword wrapped in linen when not in use. Not because it's sacred, because it stains worse than the axe. Then there are the special tools. The branding iron, for example, used for thieves, heretics, anyone the court once marked forever. The first time you used it, your hands trembled. Not from fear, from the heat, the hiss, the smoke, the scream. It's an awful thing to hold, not just because it burns skin, but because it burns dignity. Even you look away sometimes, not out of sympathy, out of shame, because nothing feels more like a choice than branding. And the pliers. You don't use them often, only when ordered. Tu pultonges, teeth, fingernails. You don't want to talk about those days, but they happened. You keep the pliers wrapped in cloth, not to preserve them, to hide them. From sight, from memory, from yourself. Every tool is cleaned after use, not because you're fastidious, because blood attracts flies, and you don't need another buzzing reminder of what you've done. You use vinegar, salt, sometimes hot water if the well's working. You've developed a ritual, a cleansing dance. Scrub, dry, oil, store. It doesn't feel like atonement. It feels like routine, which might be worse. You once tried to count how many lives each blade has taken. Then you stopped. Not because it was too high, because it started to feel like scorekeeping. And no matter how numb you get, you're not ready for that. Historians still argue whether medieval executioners personalized their tools or treated them like any other weapons. You know the answer. Each blade holds a memory, each rope a breath. You carry them not just in your belt, but in your spine. In the way your fingers twitch when idle, in the dreams where you wake up swinging. There's a drawer in your quarters, a small one, locked. Inside are pieces you no longer use. The garrote, the old block with a crack down the center. A worn leather hood, stitched by hand, that smells of sweat and fear. You don't look at them anymore, but you never throw them away, because they're part of you now. Like scars you don't see until candlelight hits just right. One day, your tools will be passed on to someone younger, hungrier, stupider. You wonder what you'll say. Sharpen this side first. Swing from the shoulder, not the wrist. Don't flinch when they scream. Or maybe nothing. Maybe you'll just leave the key on the table and walk into the woods, like your predecessor, like all of them eventually do. Because in the end, the only tool you never master is how to walk away clean. They tell you not to look. They say, don't look them in the eyes. Don't listen to their words. Don't learn their names. Because once you do, they stop being the condemned. They become people, but it's too late for you. You looked. You always look. And now, you remember. The first face you can't forget belonged to a boy. Not a man, a boy. 17 winters old. No beard. Barely taller than the axe handle. His crime? He stole a sheep. Not for profit. For suit. His mother was sick. His sister had been coughing blood for weeks. He said the sheep would have lasted 3 days, maybe 4. But the law is the law, and the Baron's livestock is sacred. So there he stood, eyes red, not from defiance, but from crying. He didn't plead, didn't run. He only said, please make it quick. You did. You told yourself it was mercy. It wasn't. It was speed. And to this day, when the wind is right, you hear his voice in the creak of the gallows rope. Then there was the widow, gray-haired, bent-backed, hands like claws from years of spinning flax. She was accused of witchcraft, not because she cursed anyone, but because her garden bloomed after frost, because her knees stopped aching after a prayer, because her neighbor's cow died suddenly, and people need a reason for everything, especially when they're scared. She didn't weep. Did scream. She looked at you with tired eyes and said, I hope your dreams are kinder than your waking life. They're not. They're worse, because in your dreams, she walks away, alive, and you wake up wishing that had been the truth. You also remember the liar. Oh, yes. The man who smirked even while the noose was being placed, said he'd bribe the guard, said this was all a show. You'll see, he laughed. They'll cut me down the moment I drop. They didn't. And as the rope pulled tight, the smirk fell off his face. That one, you don't feel bad for him, but you remember it, because it taught you that even cowards can act brave until reality shows up. There's the face of the noblewoman. Young, soft-spoken, smelled like lavender even on the scaffold. She poisoned her husband. Everyone agreed on that. What they didn't agree on was why. Some say he beat her. Others say he cheated. One rumor claimed she caught him in bed with a squire. The truth? You never knew. But when she looked at you, really looked at you, she didn't blink. She knelt, hands folded, and whispered, "Thank you." For what? You still don't know. But you bowed your head before swinging. It was the only time you ever did that. Historians still argue whether executioners ever felt remorse. You don't argue. You live it. Every single night. Some faces stay because they were loud. Others stay because they were silent. But the ones that haunt you, they're the ones who looked relieved, as if you were freeing them, as if death was less cruel than whatever waited on the other side of that scaffold. And sometimes you believe them. You tried once to forget, made a list, wrote only the crimes, not the names. Thief, murderer, heretic, traitor. But the paper felt too thin, the ink too permanent. So you burned it. The smoke stung your eyes, but not enough. Now you carry them differently. Not in scrolls, not in records, but in flashes. The way a condemned man gripped the platform like it could save him. The whisper of a girl saying goodbye to no one. The broken hymn from the priest who forgave everyone but himself. Sometimes you think about what would happen if they could speak now. All of them. Together. A crowd of the dead. Would they scream? Would they weep? Would they thank you? You're not sure which would be worse. And then there's the face you fear most. Yours. Reflected in water. In steel. In the eyes of the next one, to kneel. You barely recognize it anymore. Lines have settled where laughter used to live. Your jaw clenches even in sleep. And your eyes, they've learned how to forget just enough to function. But not enough to be free. There are nights you sit by the block, staring at the grain in the wood. You see outlines, shapes, faces. You blink. They're gone. You blink again. They return. They never speak. But they're always watching. One day, you think, your face will join them in someone else's memory. A younger man with a newer axe who looks just once into your eyes and remembers. You wake before the sun. Not because you're eager, because you never really slept. The scaffold creaks in the wind outside. You can hear it groaning, even from inside your chamber, like it's stretching its joints before another day's labor. Funny, you think the wood complains more than the condemned do. You rise slowly, like a man twice your age. Your knees pop, your spine crackles, and your shoulders carry the invisible weight of the coming hour. This is not a normal day. This is an execution day. You don't eat. Your stomach stopped allowing food on these mornings a long time ago. Instead, you light a candle, sit at the edge of your bed, and stare at your boots, because those boots will soon step on blood. Again, you clean them anyway, because you always do, not for appearance, for control, because polishing leather is something you can control. Unlike everything else about what's coming, the crowd starts gathering before the bells toll. You don't have to look out the window to know. You can feel it. That energy. The air becomes heavier, tighter, like it knows something's about to happen, and it's trying to hold its breath. By the time you reach the steps of the platform, the square is full. Children on shoulders. Bakers with aprons still dusted in flour. Women pretending to look away, but not really. This is their entertainment, their lesson, their ritual. And you're the priest. You climb the scaffold. 1 step, 2, 3. Each creaks under your weight. The wood here is stained. You've scrubbed it before, dozens of times. But no matter how hard you work, the color never fades. Blood becomes part of the grain, like memory becomes part of you. At the top, the platform is bare for now. Soon, it will hold a man, or a woman, or a boy, or a thief, or a heretic, or all of them at once. But for now, it's just wind and silence. You check the block. Wipe it clean again, even though it already is. You run your fingers over the blade. The edge bites. Good. Still sharp. The rope hangs beside you. Not needed today, but always ready. Then the guards arrive. Clanking boots. Armor that's more decorative than functional. And between them, the condemned. This one's young, pale, hands bound, legs barely working. He doesn't resist. They always say they'll scream. Run. Fight. But when the scaffold is real, not just a whisper in the tavern, they always collapse inward, like puppets who suddenly realize their strings are fire. You don't look at his face. Not yet. Instead, you take your place. To the left, hands folded, axe at your side. The priest reads something from a scroll. You don't listen. You used to. But the words all blend now. They sound less like forgiveness, more like excuses. Then it's your turn. The guards nod. Step back. You approach the boy. He flinches. You help him kneel. Softly, gently, because even if you're death, you can still be kind. You lower his head. Place his hands on the block. Adjust slightly. You've learned the angle. You whisper. It'll be fast. You don't know if that's true. But it's the only lie you allow yourself. You raise the axe. And for a moment, just a breath, the world stops. Boj still. Wind holds its note. Even the crowd forgets to blink. Then the swing. One arc. One sound. Not a scream. Not a cry. Just finality. The head rolls. The body slumps. The crowd exhales. And that's the part that always gets you. Not the blood. Not the motion. But the sound of relief. Like something wrong has been fixed. Like balance has been restored. As if a boy's death somehow made their bread rise better. You clean the blade. Place it back. Step off the platform. And just like that, you vanish. The baker returns to his stall. The gossip restarts. The laughter resumes. You, meanwhile, are already walking back to your quarters. You don't get applause. You don't want it. Because this wasn't a performance. This was just Tuesday. Inside your chamber, you wash your hands. Twice. Even though you wore gloves. Because the blood isn't just on your skin, it's in your fingernails, your palms, your soul. You sit. The candle is still flickering. You stare into the flame and whisper, one less face to remember. But you know that's not true. Because tonight, when you close your eyes, his will be the first to appear. You like to tell yourself you serve justice. But deep down, you know the truth. You serve the crown. And justice? Justice is whatever the crown says it is this week. This week, it's a baker who raised prices during famine. Last week, it was a priest who said the wrong prayer. Next week, it might be a child who kicked a guard's horse. It doesn't matter what they did. It matters who wants them gone. And who better to make them disappear than you? You, the man with no last name, no family, no friends, only a job. You were told once that the king's law is pure, divine, unquestionable. But then you saw a boy hanged for stealing onions. Then a noble pardon for murdering a farmer. And you realized the law isn't a scale. It's a sword. And you're the one holding it. Of course, they don't say it that way in the royal hall. They say things like, the integrity of the realm must be preserved, or he was a danger to public order, even if he was just drunk. Even if public order means keeping the baron's son from blushing at gossip. You've heard these speeches. You've nodded. You've saluted. Because what else can you do? Say no. Laughable. Executioners don't get opinions. You get orders. And yet, the crown needs you. Desperately. Because kings don't swing blades. They don't touch blood. They don't stain their silk gloves. They just sign parchment, look away, and let you do the dirty work. That way, their conscience stays clean and their power looks just. Sometimes a rider comes at dawn, royal colors, wax-sealed scroll. Script so elaborate, it's hard to tell if it's a death warrant or a wedding invitation. You don't ask questions. You break the seal, read the name, sharpen the blade. Other times, it's less formal. A whisper at market, a wink from the sheriff, a bag of coin dropped too loudly on your bench. The message is always the same. Remove this problem. No trial, no sermon, no crowd. Just a body in the river by morning. And guess who does that too? You? Because you're not just the axe. You're the silencer. Historians still argue whether executioners were part of the royal bureaucracy or simply tools for fear. You know the answer. You are both. A necessary evil. A nameless cog in a golden machine. If you do your job well, no one thanks you. If you falter once, they blame you, not the crown. Because the crown is holy. You are replaceable. There was one time, you remember it sharply. A man brought in for treason, except you knew him. You played with him as boys. Shared crusts and bruises. He once pulled you from a frozen lake. And now, he knelt on your scaffold, said nothing, just looked. And in that look, you saw it. Forgiveness, not for him, for you. You did your duty. The king applauded. But you've never been the same since. You tried to quit once, walked to the castle, stood before a royal clerk, said, I don't want to do this anymore. He laughed, not because you were funny, but because you were stupid. Then he handed you a sealed letter. Inside, your own name, already signed, already approved. You understood. There's no walking away, not without someone taking your place or taking your head. So now, you don't ask, you don't question, you don't think, you follow, swing, wash, repeat, because that's how the crown survives. And as long as they need you, you'll keep going, even if it rots you from the inside, even if your dreams turn to rust, even if one day it's your own name on that scroll. Because in this kingdom, justice is blind. But you see everything. One morning, they send you a boy. No warning. No explanation. Just a knock at the door. A god with a sneer. And behind him, 17, mabioten, freckles. Too clean, too alive. You stare. The guard says, he's your apprentice now. Train him. Then he leaves, just like that, as if handing off a dog. As if you're not the kingdom's butcher. As if what you do can be taught like carpentry. You hate him instantly. Not because he's done anything wrong, but because he's you 30 years ago. Too curious, too trusting, too eager to learn. You grunt, motion him in. He smiles, you sigh. This is going to be awful. At first, you ignore him. You clean the axe alone. You prepare the scaffold alone. You swing alone, but he watches everything. Eyes like candle flames, burning, consuming, and always asking questions. How do you know where to aim? Why do some scream more than others? Have you ever missed? You give short answers, or none at all. Because once you start talking, you'll never stop, and some knowledge is a curse. He tries to joke, bad ones. Hey, we've really got ahead of ourselves today, eh? You don't laugh. He tries again. You glare. He stops. You think you've scared him off? But the next morning, he's still there, sweeping the scaffold, sharpening the blade, practicing the stance. He holds the axe wrong. Too high, too stiff. You reach over, adjust his grip, and for a moment, your hands touch, and you feel it. Warmth. Something you haven't felt in years. You don't talk about it. You don't talk much at all. But slowly, he learns. Not just how to cut, how to stand, how to look away, how to pretend you don't feel anything. He asks less now, laughs less, sleeps less. You recognize the signs. He's becoming you, and it breaks you in ways you didn't know you could still break. One night, he comes to your chamber, eyes wide, shaking. It was a girl, he whispers. She couldn't have been more than 13. You nod, because there's nothing else to say. He starts to cry. You don't stop him. Let it out, you think. Let it all out, before it calcifies, before it turns you into stone. Later, you find him in the yard, swinging the axe at nothing, over and over, practicing, preparing, perfecting. You watch from the doorway, not as a teacher, but as a mirror. And for the first time, you wonder, what if I had someone like me back then? Would I have become something else? Too late now. But maybe, just maybe, you can keep him from rotting the same way. Historians still argue whether executioners trained apprentices or simply passed the role down informally. But you know this, you didn't choose this life. But if he's going to live it, you'll make sure he survives it, even if it means he hates you, even if it means he leaves. Because better a scarred survivor than another ghost in your dreams. One morning, you find him standing by the axe, touching it like it's holy, like it speaks. You walk up behind him. He doesn't turn. You say, you can still walk away. He nods, but doesn't move. The next execution, he stands beside you, not ready, but willing. You pass him the blade. Your hand lingers. And in that moment, everything passes between you. The blood, the silence, the sleepless nights. You let go, and he lifts it. Later that night, after the crowd disperses, he doesn't sleep. Neither do you. But he doesn't cry. And neither do you. Because tonight, for the first time in years, it starts with a whisper. You're not alone. Not from lips, from reputation. You never asked for it, never wanted it. But stories, they grow legs. And soon, you're not just the executioner anymore. You're a legend. It begins small. A child too young to understand death points at you in the market and says, "That's the man who speaks to the axe." Then a blacksmith swears he saw your shadow move before you did. A farmer claims the rain doesn't fall on your boots. A beggar tells tales that your blade never misses not because you're skilled, but because the devil guides it. You don't correct them. You don't have time for stories. You have work to do. Still, you notice. The way people step aside before you speak, the way doors close when your boots echo down the street, the way even guards avoid your gaze like you're contagious. You've become something other than human. Not feared, not respected, not hated exactly. Something worse, untouchable. One day, a boy you don't know calls you a monster. You turn slowly. His mother slaps him, but you just kneel and say, "Monsters don't feel cold at night." Then you walk away, because you know the truth. Monsters sleep fine. You don't. Eventually, they give you a mask. At first, it's just for ceremony. A black hood, thick wool, smells like sweat and old decisions. But then it becomes something more. A rule, a requirement, a persona. The mask becomes the man, and behind it you disappear. When you first wear it, you feel silly, like a child pretending to be scary. But then the first man looks up at you through tears and says, "Please, don't let the monster do it. Let a man do it." You don't correct him, because you're not a man anymore, are you? You're something else, a myth. The mask has no eyes, but you see everything. It has no mouth, but somehow it speaks, not to the condemned to the crowd. It says, "This is not personal. This is justice. This is your fault as much as mine." And the crowd nods. They clap. They go home feeling safe. Because monsters do the killing, not them. You start noticing that even your shadow looks different now. Longer, sharper, hungrier. You take off the mask at night, but sometimes you swear it's still there. Your reflection in water doesn't blink. Your face feels too smooth, like it's been erased. And when you speak, your voice sounds like someone else's. Historians still argue whether executioners wore masks to hide identity or to separate self from action. You know the answer. It's both, because when the mask is on, you're a function, a tool, a blade with legs. No doubts, no guilt. But when the mask comes off, you become a man again. And being a man? That's worse. There's a boy once, small, frail, accused of theft. You try to delay it. Ask the judge for proof. Even offer to pay restitution yourself. But the crown is making an example. So the boy comes to the scaffold. And when he sees you masked, silent, unmoving, he says, "Are you death?" You pose, just for a second. Then you nod, because death is kinder than what he's about to feel. After that, you start sleeping in the mask. Not because it helps, because it makes dreams less vivid. When you wake up, the pillow is soaked in sweat. But at least you don't wake up screaming anymore. You wonder if that's progress. Or sur Honday, people begin leaving gifts at your door. Not kind ones. Dead birds, rotten apples, paintings of demons. One day, you find a crude effigy with your mask nailed to its face. You don't react. You don't have time. Another execution is scheduled. And legends don't take days off. Then it changes again. Someone paints your likeness on a tavern wall. Not your real face, the masked one. Eyes like void, a crimson axe. And beneath it, mercy wears a hood. You stare at it for a long time. You want to laugh. You want to cry. You do neither. You just walk away. Because you know what's worse than being feared? Being understood. The apprentice starts asking questions again. Do you remember what your face looked like before the mask? You shrug. He pushes. Do you think you could take it off and live a normal life? You say, if I take it off, I'll still see it when I close my eyes. He doesn't speak after that, but later you hear him sharpening his blade alone. Sometimes you imagine the mask speaking back, saying things you won't say aloud. You chose this. You are always like this. You wear me because you like it. You shout at it. You throw it across the room. It lands upright, staring at you, silent, judging. You put it on again because the mask doesn't lie. It never has. It's just you, with the truth exposed. And sometimes it's easier to be the monster they imagine than the man you remember. It's the only day of the year where you're not the most terrifying person in the town square, but somehow that makes it worse. The Feast of Fools, a carnival of chaos, a celebration of inversion, where beggars become bishops, children lecture scholars, and the village drunk gets to wear a crown just for laughs. And you're not the executioner today. You're the punchline. It begins with a bell, not the one that tolls for death, but one tuned for mockery. Its clang rings out across the cobblestone streets like laughter made of iron. The crowd spills into the square-painted faces, jester hats, drunken hymns. They wear animal masks, they speak in fake Latin, and they throw cabbage at passing priests. Everything is upside down. Everything is ridiculous. And that includes you. They've dressed you in rags. Not your execution is black. No axe. No hood. Just burlap, hay sticking out the sleeves, and a paper crown that keeps sliding off. You're the king of misrule. The town clown. The very opposite of fear. Children laugh as they pull on your tunic. Women smear soot on your cheeks. Someone ties a dead fish to your belt. You don't fight it. You let it happen, because this is part of the job too. Historians still argue whether the Feast of Fools was truly a subversive ritual or simply controlled chaos. You don't argue, you endure, because you know the truth. This is the only day they can laugh at death, because they think it won't laugh back tomorrow. There's a parade. You're at the front, riding a donkey backwards, gripping the tail like reins. Your apprentice walks behind, trying not to smile. He's wearing antlers. You make eye contact once. He shrugs. You both keep going. At the feast, they serve bread shaped like skulls. Ale flows freely. Someone stands on a table and mimics your voice. By order of the crown, off with his lunch. Everyone laughs, even you, sort of. But beneath it all, something festers. Because even though they're laughing today, you've seen their faces when the mask is back on. You've seen those same hands trembling tomorrow, clutching rosaries and sweating guilt. They pretend this day is freedom. But really, it's permission. Permission to mock the man who haunts their sleep. Permission to throw pies instead of stones. Because it's easier to laugh at the monster once a year than admit you let him live in your town the other 364. Night falls, the music dies, the masks come off. Yours doesn't. Even though it's made of paper, even though it's soaked in ale and smeared with soot, it still feels heavier than your real one. You walk home barefoot. The donkey's long gone. The apprentice walks behind you. Neither of you speaks. At your door, he says, "They don't really hate you." You nod, because you know the truth. They don't hate the executioner. They just hate that they need him. But the night isn't done with you. At home, you light a candle. Sit by the fire, try to forget the jokes. But laughter has a way of sticking, like mud to your boots. You wash your face. The soot stays. You wash again. It's not soot. It's shame. You sleep badly that night, dreams filled with bells and laughter, mocking eyes. A cabbage explodes on your face in slow motion. You wake up sweating, the mask reel or notice still there. The next morning, the town is quiet. Streets are dirty with confetti and broken jugs. The joy is gone. The dread has returned. You sharpen your axe. The crowd will return tomorrow, silent this time, huddled, praying, avoiding your eyes. But today's laughter, it won't be mentioned. Not out of shame, out of fear that it might invite the mask back. Because even in jest, they gave it life. And they know, once the mask laughs, it remembers. And it may not stop. You don't sleep that night. Her eyes follow you, even in dreams. Not accusing, not pleading, just waiting, as if she already knows what you'll decide. And she's giving you time to catch up. Dawn comes like a verdict, cold, quiet, unforgiving. The torchlight flickers along the corridor. Each footstep echoes louder than it should. Your apprentice hands you the hood and gloves. He opens his mouth to speak, then closes it again. There's nothing useful to say. You nod. He nods back. Two ghosts performing a ritual. The square is already filling. Not with jeers today. Not with stones or shouts. Just breath. 1,000 people holding it. She walks without force. She walks like she's not afraid of the end. You watch the way she moves, not proud, not broken. Just ready. When she reaches the platform, she doesn't look at the crowd. She looks at you. The axe feels heavier today. Not in your arms and your spine. In your ribs? You offer the hood. She shakes her head. I'd rather see the sky. You hesitate. But then, you nod. It's the first kindness you've given in months that wasn't dictated by law. You raise the axe, but something stops you. It's not mercy. It's not doubt. It's a thought. What if she was right? What if the child she killed really would have grown into cruelty? What if she saved lives? What if justice and mercy are not opposites, but twins born from grief? You lower the axe an inch, and in that inch, history shifts. Historians still argue whether the execution was delayed or whether you simply paused to steady your grip. But something in your hands shook that morning, and some say it never stopped. You finish the task, clean, quick, like she asked. There's no cheer, no stones, only silence and wind. Later, when you sit by the fire, your apprentice speaks first. I think she scared them more than you do. You nod, because fear of death is common, but fear of truth, that's rarer, and it lingers longer. The next day, someone leaves flowers at the execution platform. No name, no message, just a single bloom wrapped in cloth. Lavender. The scent fills your home that night. Not from the flower, but your memory of her voice. Will you look me in the eyes? You did. And now you can't forget them. You didn't choose him. He was just there one day, awkward, silent, smelling like fear and barley bread. The magistrate handed him over with a shrug. Your new apprentice. He's eager. You looked at the boy 15, maybe. 16 if you squinted hard enough. Hands too soft, eyes too wide. You'd seen condemned men with steadier legs. At first, he tried too hard, polishing the axe every hour, organizing rope by length and shade, asking questions. So many questions. Why do you soak the blade in oil? Do you ever miss? What do they say before they go? You didn't answer at first, not because you were cruel, because he was still soft. And softness doesn't last long in your profession, but he didn't quit. Even after the first execution he witnessed when he vomited behind the stocks and cried into his own sleeve, he showed up the next morning with the same question. Did I do something wrong? You shook your head. No, he did exactly what he should have. He learned. Now, a year has passed. His hands have hardened. He sharpens the tools without being told. He speaks less. Sometimes you catch him staring not at the condemned, but at their families. He's learning where the pain really settles. Historians still debate whether apprentices in medieval justice systems were trained formally or simply absorbed by exposure. You don't need books to know. This boy is becoming like you, whether he wants to or not. One day, after a double hanging, you find him sitting on the edge of the platform, staring at the empty rope. You sit beside him. Neither of you speaks for a while. Then he says, "Do you ever wonder what we'd be if we weren't this?" You don't answer, because you stopped asking that question years ago. But you say, "You'd have made a good carpenter." He laughs once, dry, hollow. "I wanted to be a baker." And there it is, the last truth. That night, he doesn't eat. The next morning, he sharpens your axe without being asked. The one after that, he's late. The one after that, he doesn't show up at all. You go to his room. He's gone. All he's left behind is a note. "Thank you for not making me like you." You sit alone that evening. The fire crackles louder than usual. You stare at your hands. They don't shake. They never do. But tonight, they feel heavier than usual. As if they remember something you forgot how to carry. You don't chase after him. You don't tell the magistrate. You simply light a second candle. For the baker that never was, it's older than you are, hanging in the corner of your room like a shadow that forgot to fade. You don't remember the first time you wore it, not exactly. But you remember what it felt like. Too tight, too warm, like wearing someone else's face. And maybe that's what it was. Made of boiled leather, stretched and blackened. No eye holes, just slits. No mouth, no breath. The inside smells like wax and smoke and fear. You only wear it when the crowd is close, when the execution must be seen but not felt. Because they don't want to know it's you. They want death, faceless, quiet, unapologetic. The first time you wore it, a child screamed and fainted. You didn't flinch. That was the point. Historians still argue whether the executioner's hood was truly standard or just a theatrical addition popularized by woodcuts and legends. You don't argue. You know what the mask does. It unburdens you. It makes you vanish. And yet, some nights you put it on when no one's watching. Not for du tout, but to see if you still exist beneath it. You look into a shard of cracked mirror, the only one in your house, and try to find your eyes through the slits. You can't, and somehow that's comforting. There was a time long ago when you tried to decorate it. You stitched a small emblem near the jaw, a crow or maybe a raven. You don't remember why. Maybe you thought it would humanize it, or maybe warn them. But now it's worn smooth. No one notices it anymore, not even you. The apprentices used to ask why you kept it so clean. "Isn't it better if it looks scary?" one asked. You looked at him once and said, "It doesn't need help." That was the last time he asked about it. Sometimes, after a public execution, you feel the mask still on your face long after you've removed it. You wash your skin, scrub the outline. Still, it lingers. A ghost that leaves no bruise. But presses just the same. The townspeople whisper stories about it. They say the mask is cursed. That once you wear it, you can't die until it's taken from you. That it's the only thing keeping your soul from slipping out. You don't deny it, because deep down, you wonder if it's true. You've lived longer than most, seen more winters than your bones should have allowed, and still the mask fits. One night after your third execution that week, you forget to remove it. You fall asleep in the chair by the fire. And in your dreams, the mask speaks. Its voice is not yours, but somehow familiar. It says, if they can't see your eyes, they won't ask what they saw. You wake up with your throat dry and your fingertips numb. The mask is gone, but its voice stays. She knocks. Not on your door, on your silence. It's midwinter. Snow crusts the rooftop like a second burial. The hearth crackles weakly. You weren't expecting anyone. No one knocks on the executioner's door. Not unless they've lost something. Au chambon. You open it. There she stands, veil soaked, eyes not. You recognize her immediately. 3 days ago, her husband, rope, a crowd, your hands. She steps in before you say a word. You don't stop her. There's something in the way she moves, not anger, not grief, just purpose. She scans the room, then sits beside your hearth like she's done it before. Like this is her fire too. For a moment, there's only the sound of melting snow hissing into your floorboards. Then she says, he confessed. You know that? You knowed. Didn't ask for mercy, didn't be. You nod again. Then she adds, still, he was a good man to me. And there it is, the fracture. The space between justice and memory. Between the man you ended and the man she loved. You offer her tea. She accepts, drinks it slowly. Then says, he used to carve wooden toys, never sold them, just gave them to children in the alley. You never knew. You never get to know. That's not part of the sentence. She reaches into her satchel, pulls out a small bundle, cloth-wrapped, hand-stitched. Inside is a figure, carved from elm, worn smooth by fingertips. An executioner, you, black hood, axe across the back. But the face it's kind, gentle. She says, he made it the week before. You want to ask why? She answers, anyway. Said he wanted to remember you as a person, not a shadow. You stare at the figure. Something shifts in your ribs. Not guilt, not sorrow, something harder to name. Historians still argue whether condemned prisoners were allowed to leave personal items for their families or for their executioners. Few records remain. But Wood remembers. And this piece remembers you. She doesn't stay long. Before leaving, she says, I don't forgive you, but I see you. And that somehow is worse than hate, because it means you're real, not the mask, not the axe. You, after she leaves, the tea still warm, you hold the carving in your hand. It's smaller than you expected, lighter, and it hums with a weight no scales could measure. You place it on the mantel beside the candle. It leans slightly, off-center, imperfect, just like the memory of a man or the truth of one. That night, you dream of children playing with toy gallows, laughing, building nooses from yarn. One of them drops the figure. It breaks, but not where you thought. The face splits, and underneath the smile, another mask. Yours. You wake with the carving still in your palm, and this time, you don't put it back on the shelf. You carry it to your bed, because for once, it's not the mask that watches you sleep. He always seems sharper than the rest. The town's magistrate. Clean cloak, steady voice, silver trim on his words. He's the one who signs the warrants, the one who hands you the names. He tells you who deserves the axe. And you deliver it. No questions. That's the arrangement. But tonight, he knocks on your door. Late. No gods, no scrolls. Just the sound of expensive boots on wet stone. You open the door slowly. He's holding a bottle. And 2 cups. You don't say anything. He walks in anyway. He sits down at your fire like a man visiting a confessor, not a judge. He pours a drink, doesn't wait for you. Then, after the 3rd sip, says, "Do you remember the baker from 5 winters ago?" You nod. Of course you do. She screamed until her throat bled. Her son tried to climb the scaffold. You still remember the weight of your axe that day. He says, "She was innocent." You don't flinch. Not anymore. But inside, something settles colder than the snow outside. He continues, "The poison wasn't hers. It was the Baron's niece. But the Baron needed a public villain. Someone loud, familiar, female. You stare into your cup, and you knew." He nods. "No shame, just inevitability. The law must feed the people, even if it's with a lie." Historians still argue whether medieval justice leaned more toward order or truth, or whether the two were ever really separate. You don't argue, because you were the blade in that lie. You ask him why he's telling you this now. He looks older than usual. Eyes like wax candles melted too far. "Because I think I'm dying." You nod once. You don't offer comfort. He finishes his drink, then says, "And because you were the only one honest enough to swing the axe without smiling." He stands, straightens his cloak, leaves the cups. As he reaches the door, he turns and adds, "Do with that truth what you like. Just don't bury it." After he's gone, you don't move for a while. Then you pour the 2nd cup. Not for him. For the baker, you set it across from you. Let the fire burn low, and stare at the place where she once stood trembling and furious as you read the sentence. The axe was clean, but justice wasn't. You keep the 2nd cup on your shelf after that night. Never touch it again. But it's there, in plain sight, in case truth ever visits again. And still, the next day, when a new name comes, you sharpen the blade, set the platform, don the hood, because truth doesn't cancel duty, but sometimes it sharpens it. You see him before the crowd does. He's small, no older than 8, shoes too big, eyes too bright. He doesn't blink when the rope is pulled. He doesn't flinch when the platform drops. He just watches, like he's memorizing something. You've seen plenty of children in the square, dragged by curious fathers, shielded by tearful mothers. But none like him. He stands apart, literally, 5 paces from the front, but never in the middle. Like he knows the best angle for the view. Afterward, when the people shuffle off whispering, shaking, reliving what they just saw, he stays, still, silent. You descend from the platform. He meets your gaze. Not afraid, not proud, just certain. You missed, he says. You pause. He's right. The man's neck didn't break clean. The legs kicked longer than they should have. You nod. "I'll do better tomorrow." The boy shrugs. You always say that. You don't ask who he is. He doesn't offer. But he keeps coming back, day after day, execution after execution. You start looking for him, not out of concern, out of recognition. You know that stare. You wore it once. One day, he speaks again. "How do you know they're guilty?" You don't answer. Because you don't. You know what the paper says. You know what the magistrate tells you. But truth? That's someone else's department. You ever say no? He asks. Now you answer. What would happen if I did? He thinks. Then, too quickly, they'd find someone else. And there it is, the cruel clarity of a child. He sees the wheel. He sees you in it. And worse, he sees himself. A week later, he doesn't show up. You pretend not to notice, but the square feels colder. The silence, too quiet. Another week. Still gone. You ask the town crier if he's seen a boy, small, dark hair. Strange questions. The crier laughs. Half the town's boys fit that. But they don't. Not really. Historians still argue whether children were deliberately exposed to executions as a form of civic education or deterrent. What they don't argue is this: some children never forgot what they saw. Some studied it. One evening, after a rare day off, you find something by your door, wrapped in linen, smelling of ink and smoke. It's a drawing, charcoal on parchment, a perfect sketch of you, standing by the gallows. The proportions are too precise for a child. Except one thing, your eyes are wrong. They're kind, too kind. You place the sketch beside the others. Maps, notices, a ledger you haven't opened in weeks. And for a moment, you consider burning it. But you don't, because maybe, just maybe, it's a version of you worth remembering. Even if it isn't true, especially if it isn't. You receive the name like always: folded parchment, red wax, official seal, some paper, some ink, some weight. But this time, something's off. The name, you recognize it, not from the tavern, not from the gallows, from your childhood. It was carved once on a stable wall beside yours, scratched deep with a nail, a boy's name. You sit down, read it again. Tomas, your brother. But that's not possible. He vanished 15 winters ago, joined the army, or the circus, or a ship. No one really knew. He just disappeared. You assumed he was dead. But now he's scheduled to be. By your hands. You go to the magistrate. He shrugs. Deserter, smuggler, inciter. We get plenty. You say the name again. Emphasize it. He's my brother. The magistrate pauses, blinks. You want to recuse yourself? You think. Harder than usual. Then say, no, because if it's really him, you'd rather it be you than someone who wouldn't hesitate. The day arrives. You don't sleep the night before. You keep replaying the last time you saw him. He was laughing, tossing an apple between both hands. You're too serious, he'd said. You'll turn into a statue one day. Maybe he was right. The crowd is thicker than usual. Word spreads fast when blood ties meet blood. Some think you won't do it. Others think you'll enjoy it. No one knows you're still not sure. Then he arrives, head down, beard long, eyes hidden. But, you know, it's him. He sees you, really sees you, and smirks. He always knew you'd get promoted. You want to ask why, where he's been, why he didn't write. But all you say is, they say you incited a rebellion. He shrugs. Did I? Who remembers? Historians still argue whether deserters in the 14th century were executed more for treason or for embarrassment to the crown. Sometimes it's the same thing. You hand him the hood. He doesn't take it. I want to see your eyes when it happens. You nod. Because you want the same. He kneels. You raise the axe. Your fingers tremble just slightly. Not from fear. From memory. You see the boy who taught you to steal apples? Who pushed you into the river and pulled you out laughing? Who carved your name beside his in that stable wall? You hesitate. Only once. Then swing. It's clean. You've never been more careful. He deserved that much. That night, you return home. You pull back the curtain near your bed. The one no one touches. Behind it, the stable wall plank. You carried it with you when you left. The carvings are still there. Faint, but clear. Thomas, you, brothers until the end. You touch the names and whisper, I kept my half of the deal. It starts with silence. Not the usual kind, not dawn before the bell silence, not the hush after a clean swing. No, this is different. This silence doesn't feel empty. It feels erased. You wake up with ash on your hands. The hearth is cold. The door is bolted. Your axe is clean, too clean. Something's missing. You check the calendar carved into your wall. A line is scratched out. Yesterday's date. Gone. You walk into the village. People stare, but not like usual. It's not fear, not reverence. It's confusion, like they expected someone else. The butcher nods at you. Didn't think we'd see you again so soon. You pause. What do you mean? He blinks. yesterday. The thing, but he doesn't finish, just wipes his hands and turns away. You stop a child, the one who always throws rocks at your gate. He doesn't flinch this time. Was it real? He asks. You don't know what to say, because you don't even know what it was. You go to the square. There's blood on the platform, but not where it should be. Not by the rope, by the steps. And smeared, like something had fallen or been dragged. There's no body, no name, just stains. And a broken hood, yours. You return home. Inside, your ledger is open. A single word written in charcoal. Stop. You search your memory. Try to recall where you were yesterday. What you did. Who you were. Nothing. Historians still argue whether medieval towns experienced mass memory loss events blamed on witchcraft, ergot poisoning, or divine punishment. But none can explain a day that disappears. That night, you sit by the window. Candle en lit, fire cold. You listen for the bell, but it never rings. Not once. When you finally sleep, the dreams come fast. But they aren't yours. You're someone else. You're the one kneeling. You're the one begging. You're the one with the axe falling, but from the other side. You wake up gasping, sweat down your back, throat raw, as if screaming. There's a knock at your door. No parchment. No seal, just a voice. There was no execution yesterday. You open the door. No one is there. Only the faint smell of iron and something burning. You walk outside. The platform is gone. Not blood-stained. Gone, as if it had never existed. And suddenly, you wonder, if no one remembers the executioner's hand, did it ever really fall? Or worse, did someone finally return the favor? The bell has always rung. Every morning, every execution, every hour the church decides should matter. You've lived your life to its rhythm, woken by it, worked by it, killed by it. But today, it doesn't ring. You notice first at dawn, the sky blushes pink, frost curling on your windowsill, and nothing, not even a creak, not even a cough of sound, just air. Too still, too wide. You wait a full hour, still nothing. You walk into the town. The blacksmith is hammering but offbeat. The baker forgets the fire. The children sleep in. Time slips. Without the bell, no one knows when to be afraid, or when to pretend not to be. At the chapel, the priest is staring at the rope like it's betrayed him. You approach. He doesn't speak at first. Just gestuurs upward. It's not stuck, he says. You glance at the belfry. Then what is it? He looks down. Empty. You climb up. Slowly. Every rung colder than the last. At the top, you see it. Where the bell should be, nothing. Not broken. Not removed. Gone. You run your hand through the air where it once hung. You feel the echo. Not sound memory. Like your bones, remember what your ears don't. That night, no one sleeps. They pretend. They lie still. But no one sleeps. The town feels unanchored, as if history itself skipped a beat. And now everything is floating, waiting for the drop. You sit by the platform, or what's left of it. A few boards, a shadow where it used to stand. Your axe lies beside you, useless. Not because there's no sentence, but because there's no moment to start it. Without the bell, there is no time. Just waiting. Historians still argue whether medieval towns used bells more for coordination or control to worship time or to be enslaved by it. What they agree on is this. When the bell stops, everything else unravels. You try to ring something else. A pot, a pan. The old wind chime near your bed. It doesn't help. People gather the next morning, same hour, they think. They look at you. What now? Someone whispers. You don't know. You've never started without the signal. And maybe you're not allowed to. That night, the dream returns. You're in the belfry again. But this time, the bell is there. Made of bone, wrapped in rope, and it's weeping. Each tear is a drop of molten iron. Each clang a heartbeat. Yours? You wake up. coughing blood. Your hands burned, but nothing in the room is hot. You stumble outside, look to the tower. Still empty, still waiting. And in that space, you finally understand. It was never the bell. It was belief. And now that it's gone, even you don't know when to fall. Or if you should. No new name arrives. No parchment. No wax seal. No knock on your door. The rope still hanging. The blade still sharp. But the list empty. You sit by the fire longer than usual, sharpening metal that will never be used. Not today. Maybe not ever again. The town is quiet. Not silent. Not erased. Just finished. No one says it, but they all feel it. Something has ended. Not with a rebellion, not with a revolt. With stillness. A stillness you don't trust. Because you were built for noise, you walk through the market. Empty stalls, unbought bread. Children play, but their laughter sounds hollow. They look at you without flinching now. Because fear fades when it isn't refreshed. You were never the shadow. You were the shape beneath it. You pass the chapel. Still no bell. Still no hour. The priest nods at you, but doesn't speak, because even confession needs something to confess. You sit on the edge of the platform, not raised, just 3 boards nailed to a stump. You've spent most of your adult life standing here, in judgment, in ritual. Now, it feels like a stage, but there's no audience left. You reach into your coat, pull out the last slip of parchment ever handed to you. The name on it is smeared, from your thumb, from your sweat, but you know what it says. It says, your name. You place it on the block. Let the wind carry it. It flutters like a dead leaf, spins, drops, gone. And with it, the ritual. Historians still argue whether executioners were ever truly replaced, or whether the role simply faded as fear took new shapes. Judges, laws, prisons, silence. But no one debates this. Every society buries its blade eventually. Some deeper than others. That night, you undress slowly, fold the black cloak, hang the hood. You never clean the axe. That's tradition. But you lay it down with care, like putting a child to sleep. You blow out the last candle, sit in the dark. For the first time in years, no guilt, no weight, just stillness. You dream of nothing, not ropes, not bells, not names, just open fields and a sky too wide to measure. And when morning comes, the town wakes, the wind shifts, the sun rises, but no one knocks on your door. And for once, you're grateful you're still here. But the fire is low. The night is quiet. Even the echoes have grown tired. Your hands have stopped shaking. Your thoughts slower, gentler, like leaves drifting downstream. You did your duty. You carried a weight no one else could. You held the line between order and chaos. Even when you didn't know which was which, you swung the axe. But it never changed who you were underneath. And now, there are no more names, no more bells, no more crowds to cheer or judge. Only you, the stillness, the breath between yesterday and tomorrow. Let it hold you now. Let the silence become soft, not empty, but peaceful. Let your shoulders fall. Let your chest rise. Let your eyes close. You've done enough. Truly, let the dream come now. Not of ropes or guilt or ash, but of open skies, of soft grass, of the gentle hum of a world that no longer asks for anything from you. You are not forgotten. You are simply free. Good night. Sweet dreams. End of script. Sweet dreams. Ah.